Everyone keeps saying landing a job takes 5 degrees and divine intervention. Wrong. Most employers just want someone who shows up, learns fast, and doesn't create chaos by week 1. So why do people think it's rocket science? Because we overinflate the requirements and psych ourselves out. If you're tired of thinking you're not qualified enough, keep watching. You'll see how getting hired is actually really simple. Ever notice how half the job postings out there look like someone's shopping list for a superhero? 3 advanced degrees, a spotless resume, 10 years of experience, and the ability to fly to work without traffic. That's the myth we've all been sold. This idea that getting hired requires you to be some impossible hybrid of genius and saint. And because that list looks unbeatable, most people never even press submit on the application. They see entry level paired with 5 years of direct experience and think, well, I guess I already failed. But here's the contradiction that nobody wants to say out loud. Most companies don't actually hire superheroes. They don't need someone with powers. They need someone who can show up, figure things out, and not break the office Wi-Fi by day 2. It's much less glamorous than the job description makes it sound. The job ad itself is like a wish list a kid writes to Santa, way longer than what they're actually going to get. They might say they want 5 years of expertise in software that's only been around for 2. Think about that. Time travel becomes the new requirement for an admin gig, and that's where people fall into the trap. They read the list, assume every box is non-negotiable, and tap out before trying. That fear of underqualification becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You don't send the resume so you don't get considered, and then you declare that jobs are impossible to land. Meanwhile, someone else with half your skill set applied, showed enthusiasm, and walked away with the spot. Picture it. You're filling out a cafe job application, and ask, where do I attach my Nobel Prize certificate? Right between references and hobbies. It's absurd, but that's almost how these posts read, and yet, the hiring managers on the other side aren't ogling your medals. More often than not, what they value higher than page after page of credentials are things like whether you'll actually respond to an email, whether you can stay calm on a stressful shift, and whether you can pick up new systems without wall-to-wall training. That should make you pause, because if the bar isn't being the smartest human alive, then what is it? What's the actual filter? The answer is really simple. They want someone steady, willing to learn, and unlikely to add headaches. Reliability looks a lot better than super brilliance when productivity depends on people showing up on Monday morning. So once you let go of the idea that you're competing with superheroes, the next obvious question is, how do you convince them you're that reliable person? It's not about piling on another fancy skill to impress. It's about proving in the simplest way possible that you're the safe choice, the one who won't increase the chaos index. And guess what? Doing that is really simple too. Here's the twist nobody points out. Your resume isn't supposed to look impressive, it's supposed to be readable. That's all. Recruiters don't care that you spent 3 hours adjusting the margins until the text blocks formed a perfect modern art triangle. They're not hanging your CV in a gallery, they're scanning it for 30 seconds, maybe less, and deciding if you're worth a call. But most people get caught up in design, buzzwords, and personal statements that nobody reads. You fill half a page talking about your passion for teamwork and excellence, while the person on the other end can't figure out what you actually did at your last job. All that fluff ends up being a distraction. You think you're signaling professionalism, but what you're really showing is noise. Recruiters skim. That's the key detail everyone forgets. They're not analyzing adjectives like a poetry teacher. They're racing through dozens, maybe hundreds of applications. If yours looks bloated, crowded, or cluttered with jargon, it goes in the next pile. A messy resume says, I'll make life harder. A clear, short, clean resume says, and I get to the point. And which message do you think lands better? Here's how really simple it is. Keep it short, keep it specific, and above all, remove mistakes. Everyone who has ever put attention to detail under skills has already disqualified themselves. Because once you prove you can't run spell check, you don't need to explain anything else. The smallest typo can sink the impression faster than not having an extra certification. Now, about the infamous cover letter. Too many people treat it like an audition for a writing prize. You don't earn points for squeezing metaphors into a job pitch, and nobody's handing out awards for most inspiring opening line. Think of the cover letter as an email with a purpose. Here's what I want. Here's what I can do. Here's why this helps you. That's it. 3 basic sentences will win every time over a page of recycled buzzwords, and research consistently shows the same outcome. Shorter resumes that highlight actual results, numbers, tasks handled, problems solved, get picked more often. Not because the recruiter cares about how you phrase things, but because they can see evidence right away. It's proof you can deliver something, not just claim it. So what's the lesson here? Stop trying to impress with flowery language. Stop thinking design is what makes you memorable. Show you're dependable, show you're precise, and show it without wasting time. That's the entire point of the resume and cover letter. Simple proof that you won't create more problems than you solve. Now that you've established on paper that you're a normal, competent adult instead of a walking buzzword generator, the next challenge is different. How do you prove the same thing in person when you're sitting across from someone deciding if you get hired? People treat interviews like they're entering a Hollywood audition. Perfect script, flawless body language, dramatic pauses. But here's the reality. Employers aren't casting for an Oscar role. They're just trying to confirm two things. You're normal, and you're interested. That's it. No dramatic soundtrack required. The biggest fear people carry into interviews is this idea that you need an encyclopedia of prepared answers. You memorize 10 possible versions of what are your strengths, and practice how to not sweat when asked about weaknesses. Then you show up sounding like a robot who swallowed a management textbook. Over-preparation turns your answers into stiff monologues. Under-preparation does the opposite. You ramble, fill every silence with nervous chatter, and somehow start talking about middle school. What recruiters and employers actually want is much simpler. Polite and clear responses that make sense. You don't need to give a life story spanning from birth to college trauma. In fact, launching into a 20-minute autobiography when asked, "Tell me about yourself," is the fastest way to drain the interviewer's patience. Imagine you're asked for directions to the nearest coffee shop, and instead of pointing down the street, you give a complete history of caffeine. That's how it feels when you overshare. Here's what works. Answer the question in short bites. Link it to what you can do for the company, and stop talking once you've made the point. The silence after is not a trap. It just means you're done. Now, if you actually want to stand out, there's one move that matters more than perfect phrasing. Ask questions back. Candidates who ask about the role, things like what a typical day looks like or how success is measured, come across as engaged. Because they are. Research consistently shows this has more weight than reciting canned lines. Think about it. If you're hiring, would you rather choose the person who sounds like they rehearsed all week or the one genuinely trying to understand the job? The bar is a lot lower than you imagine, and once you grasp that, interviews stop feeling like interrogations. You don't need a perfect answer to every question. You just need enough preparation to explain yourself without panic, plus the awareness to treat it like a conversation. A little effort, some genuine interest, and enough restraint to avoid rambling autobiographies. That is a really simple interview strategy. So what actually sets you apart isn't polish, it's presence. Showing that you got ready, showing that you listened, and showing that you care enough to ask them something in return. Effort beats expertise here, every single time. That's why the people who overthink often lose to the ones who just show up with focus and some curiosity. Once you realize the bar for interviews is much lower than you feared, the whole hiring process flips. It becomes less about performing and more about persistence in applying, because the toughest part isn't nailing one interview, it's keeping your momentum when rejection shows up. Getting a job isn't about being flawless, it's about staying consistent, showing up and applying even after getting told no. Rejection isn't proof you're unqualified, it's just part of the math. Someone eventually says yes if you keep pressing submit. Stop waiting until you feel ready. Applications reward the people who show up with energy, not the ones who endlessly polish a resume in their downloads folder. Effort beats credentials more often than you think. You don't need to be extraordinary. You just need to outlast the people who gave up, because in the end, getting employed is really simple. And the moment you believe that, the whole process stops feeling impossible.